Are you with this 12-year-old female?
Yeah, she says she's having trouble breathing. She said she was stabbed multiple times.
Serial killers. The term alone sends chills down our spines, conjuring images of cold, calculating adults driven by dark desires. But what if I told you that some of the most chilling killers were children? Yes, kids. I just killed someone. I strangled them and slit their throat and stabbed them. Now they're dead. It was amazing. In this video, we're diving deep into the unsettling world of the youngest serial killers in history. Children whose crimes left their communities in shock and disbelief. These are stories where innocence took a backseat to something far more sinister. Buckle up, because what you're about to hear will make you question everything you thought you knew about the human psyche. Eric Smith, the small town nightmare. Imagine a small, peaceful town where nothing much ever happens. Now, imagine that same town shattered by the actions of a 13-year-old boy. Meet Eric Smith. He was a young boy with red hair, freckles, and glasses, a face that appeared innocent enough. But beneath that facade lay a dark and twisted psyche. Eric had a troubled childhood, plagued by relentless bullying and an unstable home environment. His pent-up frustration and anger simmered beneath the surface, waiting to erupt. That fateful moment came on August 2nd, 1993. While riding his bicycle, Eric encountered 4-year-old Derek Robbie, a child who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Eric lured Derek into a secluded area where he viciously attacked him, bashing his head with a rock and leaving him to die. The crime was so shocking and brutal that it left the entire nation reeling. How could a child commit such a horrific act? Eric was charged and convicted of second-degree murder, sentenced to 9 years to life in prison. Over time, he has expressed remorse. However, society has been slow to forgive, haunted by the thought of what this seemingly innocent boy was capable of. The jury has found the defendant guilty of murder in the second degree, and the verdict is unanimous. Parole has been denied repeatedly, as the public remains disturbed by the memory of this devastating crime. Aaron Caffey, the family annihilator. When you think of family, you think of love, support, and safety. But for Aaron Caffey, family was something to be destroyed. Born in 1991, Aaron grew up in a strict religious household in Texas. When Aaron's parents forbade her from seeing her boyfriend, Charlie Wilkinson, her perspective took a dark turn. On March 1st, 2008, Aaron, Charlie, and 2 of Charlie's friends broke into the cafe home with a horrific plan. They viciously attacked Aaron's mother, Penny, and her 2 younger brothers, Matthew and Tyler, killing them all. Aaron's father, Terry, was shot multiple times but miraculously survived the assault. The group then set the house on fire, hoping to kill Terry and conceal their crime. However, Terry managed to crawl to a neighbor's home and get help. Soon, the truth came to light. Aaron was arrested and charged with 3 counts of capital murder and 1 count of attempted capital murder. During her trial, she displayed little emotion, even as the evidence of her involvement was presented. Ultimately, Aaron was sentenced to 2 life sentences plus 25 years, making her eligible for parole after 40 years. Daniel Bartlam, the horror movie killer. A 14-year-old boy obsessed with horror movies and violence plans to commit a murder that mirrors the plots of the films he has been consuming. This is not a fictional scenario, but the tragic reality for Daniel Bartlam. Born in 1997 in Nottinghamshire, England, Daniel had a disturbing fascination with violent content from a young age. He spent significant time watching horror movies and playing violent video games, and eventually his morbid fantasies became a horrific reality. On April 25, 2011, Daniel decided to act out one of his gruesome imaginings. Armed with a claw hammer, he crept into his mother Jacqueline's bedroom while she slept and struck her repeatedly on the head, killing her instantly. But Daniel's brutality did not end there. In a cold, calculated move, he set the house on fire, hoping to conceal his crime and make it appear accidental. However, Daniel's plan unraveled when the police discovered a story he had written on his computer. The plot of the story mirrored the exact manner in which Daniel had murdered his own mother. This damning piece of evidence sealed his fate. During the trial, the judge described the killing as senseless and sentenced Daniel to life in prison with a minimum term of 16 years. Alyssa Bustamante, the thrill killer. Alyssa Bustamante was a troubled teen with a dark side that no one saw coming until it was too late. Born in 1994, Alyssa was raised in a tumultuous environment, with her father incarcerated and her mother unable to provide for her. She was cared for by her grandparents, but despite their best efforts, Alyssa struggled with severe depression and suicidal tendencies. She became fascinated with death, and this morbid fixation would soon take a horrifying turn. On October 21, 2009, Alyssa lured her 9-year-old neighbor, Elizabeth Olton, into the woods. What Elizabeth believed to be a harmless invitation to play quickly transformed into a nightmare. Alyssa strangled her, slit her throat, and stabbed her repeatedly before burying her in a shallow grave. Later, Alyssa would describe the experience in her diary as amazing, a word that sent chills through those who read it. A large-scale search was initiated when Elizabeth was reported missing, and Alyssa initially played the part of the concerned neighbor, even assisting with the search efforts. However, her charade did not last. Her diary, along with her eventual confession, revealed the cold, calculated nature of her crime. Alyssa was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole, plus an additional 30 years for armed criminal action. Lionel Tate, wrestling with murder. Next up, we have Lionel Tate, a case that became infamous for all the wrong reasons. Lionel was just 12 years old when he found himself at the center of a life-altering crime. It was July 1999 in Pembroke Park, Florida. Lionel was entrusted with the care of 6-year-old Tiffany Unick, a young girl who fully trusted him. However, the events that followed were anything but innocent. Lionel claimed they were merely imitating wrestling moves they had seen on television. Yet, Tiffany's injuries were far more severe than what one would expect from a playful scuffle. Her skull was fractured, her ribs broken, and her liver lacerated. Injuries typically associated with a major car accident. This was no mere play, but a brutal and prolonged assault. At just 14 years old, Lionel became the youngest person in U.S. history to be sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, after being convicted of first-degree murder. His case ignited a firestorm of debate around juvenile justice, with questions arising about whether it was right to imprison a child for life, and whether Lionel truly grasped the gravity of his actions. Despite these questions, Lionel's fate was sealed, and his life would never be the same. In 2004, his conviction was overturned on appeal due to doubts about his mental competency during the trial. He was released, only to find himself back behind bars a year later for armed robbery. Christian Fernandez, the tragic killer. Christian Fernandez's story is one that's steeped in tragedy right from the very beginning. Born in 1999, Christian endured a childhood that no child should ever have to experience. His mother was only 12 years old when she gave birth to him, and his father was never present in his life. From an early age, Christian was exposed to violence and neglect, and by the time he was 12, this exposure had led to a tragic incident that would forever alter the course of his life. On March 14, 2011, Christian was left in charge of his 2-year-old half-brother, David Galarraga. In a moment of frustration and anger, Christian lost control and repeatedly slammed David's head into a bookshelf. Despite the severity of David's injuries, Christian's mother did not seek immediate medical attention. By the time she finally did, it was too late, and David succumbed to a fractured skull and severe brain damage. As a result of this incident, Christian was charged with first-degree murder, making him the youngest person in Jacksonville, Florida, to be charged as an adult. The case sparked significant controversy, with many arguing that Christian was a product of his unfortunate circumstances, and that charging him as an adult was unjust. Ultimately, Christian accepted a plea deal which reduced the charge to manslaughter and aggravated battery. He was sentenced to 7 years in a juvenile facility, followed by 8 years of probation. Morgan Geyser and Anissa Weier. In the age of the internet, urban legends can take on a life of their own, sometimes with terrifying consequences. Morgan Geyser and Anissa Weier, both just 12 years old, had become obsessed with the fictional Slender Man character that originated from an internet meme. But to these young girls, Slender Man was not just a story. They believed he was real and had given them a mission. On May 31st, 2014, the girls lured their friend Peyton Leutner into the woods in Waukesha, Wisconsin, under the pretense of playing hide and seek. However, unbeknownst to Peyton, she was the target of a horrifying plot, Once deep in the forest, Morgan pulled out a knife and began stabbing Peyton, with Anissa urging her on. Peyton was stabbed 19 times, and the girls left her for dead, believing they had fulfilled Slender Man's orders. But Peyton was determined to survive. Displaying incredible strength and courage, she managed to crawl to a nearby road, where a passing cyclist found her and called for help. Miraculously, Peyton survived the attack. Morgan and Anissa were charged with attempted first-degree intentional homicide and tried as adults. Morgan, who was later diagnosed with early-onset schizophrenia, was sentenced to 40 years in a mental health institution, while Anissa received a 25-year sentence. Jordan Jobson, the drunken killer. Alcohol and drays can turn even the most ordinary night into a deadly disaster, as was the case with Jordan Jobson. Born in 1992, Jordan grew up in Tyneside, England, and by the age of 15, she was already deep into the world of substance abuse. On the night of August 2nd, 2007, Jordan's life and the life of her victim would change forever. That night, 18-year-old Samantha Magin was out with friends, enjoying her first night out since becoming a mother. But her evening took a dark turn when she encountered Jordan during a confrontation outside a flat. High on alcohol and cocaine, Jordan grabbed a serrated bread knife and launched a frenzied attack on Samantha, stabbing her 10 times and inflicting 43 separate injuries. Despite the best efforts of paramedics, Samantha died from her wounds. During her trial, Jordan claimed she couldn't remember the attack due to her intoxicated state, but the jury wasn't convinced. She was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum term of 12 years due to her age. Antonio Barbeau and Nathan Pape, the teen killers. In September 2012, the small town of Sheboygan Falls, Wisconsin, was rocked by a crime so brutal that it seemed almost unbelievable. 13-year-old Antonio Barbeau and his 14-year-old friend Nathan Pape had devised a scheme to rob and kill Antonio's 78-year-old great-grandmother, Barbara Olson. Their motivation stemmed from a misguided desire for money and the thrill of committing a criminal act. On September 17, 2012, the boys entered Barbara's home armed with a hatchet and a hammer. They viciously attacked her, striking her repeatedly on the head until she was dead. After the murder, they stole her jewelry and cash, then attempted to cover their tracks by hiding her body in the garage and trying to clean up the crime scene. However, their plan quickly unraveled when they were caught attempting to sell the stolen items. Both boys were arrested and charged with first-degree intentional homicide. During the trial, the prosecution painted a chilling picture of the crime, describing how the boys had meticulously planned the murder and shown no remorse for their actions. Antonio was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 36 years, while Nathan received a similar sentence. Derek and Alex King. The brothers pact. What could drive two brothers, aged just 13 and 12, to kill their own father? That's the question at the heart of the tragic case of Derek and Alex King. On November 26, 2001, the brothers, fed up with what they claimed was their father's abuse, decided to take matters into their own hands. As Terry King slept, Derek and Alex took an aluminum baseball bat and beat him to death. But they didn't stop there. In an attempt to cover up their crime, they set the house on fire and fled to the home of a family friend, Ricky Chavez. The boys hoped they could escape the consequences of their actions, but it wasn't long before the police caught up with them. During the investigation, the boys made several conflicting statements, at one point claiming that Chavez had coerced them into killing their father. Chavez, who had a criminal record and was later revealed to have had inappropriate relationships with the boys, was also charged in connection with the crime. However, the boys eventually pleaded guilty to third-degree murder. Derek was sentenced to 8 years in prison, while Alex received a 7-year sentence. These stories aren't just about the crimes. They're about the twisted paths that led these young individuals down a dark road.